All right, let's get started today. Now, the purpose for this call is I think everybody on this call is they're not new to sales, but they are new to the industry. And the whole thing I'm trying to do is I know sometimes you can feel good, and there's something that comes with just having confidence in the knowledge that you hold, right? So when you're going into a new industry, it can appear like overwhelming. Where do I start? So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, so that you can pretty much hit the ground running. Now, I've broken it down to primarily 6 areas of knowledge that everybody needs to have. So part of it is tied to the equipment. So, panels, the inverters, and the batteries. That's pretty much all the equipment that a solar system has. So, 1, 2, 3, just having a general idea of how the panels work, how they operate, what is an inverter, how do those work, and then batteries, because there's so many misconceptions of batteries. So those are the 3 parts of the equipment that we'll be talking about today. And then there's some industry expertise, some things that are specific to the solar industry, how the utility companies operate, and why does it matter, the different financing options for solar, and then know your customers. So I'll be talking about those 6 things today. Does anybody have a question? Maybe there's something that you think might help you feel more comfortable in the industry. This is open to everybody. So does anybody have any questions before we get started? All right, so I'll take that as a no for now. So let's jump right into this. We're going to start off just understanding the electric transmission companies. Okay, so why does it matter? Okay, what we are doing for our customers is we're giving them an alternative for where they get their energy, right? Let's see, somebody has a chat. Was that a question? Okay. So we're giving them an option, in my opinion, a great option, where they can be self-reliant, they can save money, and it's just cleaner energy, just more control on that. So, but let's talk about this just a little bit. Now, the grid is the largest machine in existence. So when you think about people getting legit energy, they're thinking about just what they plug into the wall. But it starts off where it's a generator, whether it's a nuclear plant, hydrogen plant, coal, whatever it is, and then it's transmitted over hundreds of miles. And who our customers deal with, is the end of it, which is the distribution. So in our area, we have we have PG&E, right? And PG&E, they do not generate the electricity. All they are is they're the end part of it. So they get the energy, and pretty much what they're doing is they're managing it, and how they distribute it, whether it's to a customer or whether it's to a commercial company. So the reason I'm mentioning this is because there's a misconception of how utility companies work. Okay. A lot of people, they tie the utility companies almost as if it's a public service, like they would the mailman, or how they would the fire department, that it's a public service that is being received by the general public. And that is not the case. There are over 1,400 different electric utility companies in the United States. 1,400. Let's see, somebody else is joining. Okay, so there are over 1,400 different electric utility companies in the United States. And there's 5 different ways how these electric companies are set up. Okay, not very common, but there are some state-run electric utility companies. Okay, so it's state-run. Then you have municipalities. So for example, you have, I think it's the city of Santa Rosa, where it's a local government that is distributing the energy. Okay. An alternative to that is a political subdivision. So for example, Modesto have what's called MID, Modesto Irrigation District, or Turlock Irrigation District. And the way those work is they are a separate entity, but they are still they're still accountable to a local municipality. So they have their own board of directors. It's not a for-profit organization. So they work within a municipality. And then separate from that, you have what's called a cooperative. So these are smaller, it could be a neighborhood, it could be a rural area where it's a cooperative. But the vast majority of California falls into the category of investor owned. And just like the name implies, why do people invest? Because they're trying to make money, right? Can everybody hear me today? Everybody, can I get a thumbs up if everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right. So an investor-owned utility company, like Pacific Gas and Electricity, San Diego Gas and Electric Company, Southern California Edison Company. So the largest companies in California are investor-owned. Now, their whole business model is to make money. So when you're talking to your clients and they're considering solar, your biggest competitor is not another solar company. It's not SunPower, it's not Sunrun, it's not one of the many different solar companies out there, but your biggest competitor is going to be the utility companies. And sometimes educating your clients and letting them know how they're currently set up can be a big difference. So when you think about investor-owned utility companies such as PG&E, we now have the distinction of paying the highest electric rates in the nation, okay? In the nation. So now if you're in an area like Modesto Irrigation District, you haven't felt the pinch, but if you're in all the surrounding cities, Brentwood, Tracy, Stockton, Merced, Los Banos, all these areas, they are an investor owned, and these clients are paying 3 times, 4 times, and even 5 times more than if they were to fall into a different category, such as Modesto Irrigation District or the city of Santa Rosa. Because again, the whole thing about these companies is they are investor owned. If you consider the #1 owner of PG&E is the Vanguard Group, okay? They own 13% of PG&E. Fidelity Investments owns 8% of PG&E. Now, if you have a 401k, then you want them to do well, right? You want the investments to grow. And that's the whole reason they invest into these electric transmission companies, because they're trying to make profit. Just last year alone, JP Morgan, they own 122,000 shares, but they just increased their 122 million shares. They just increased their shares by 95 million in September of last year, because they're seeing these electric utility companies as a great investment. How do they make their money? They make their money by taking it from their clients. Again, they're not generating the electricity. All they're doing is distributing the electricity. And they do it at a higher cost than everybody else in the United States. So here in California, even if you do not have PG&E, if you have San Diego Gas and Electricity, you are paying the highest rates in the nation. Okay. So again, I mentioned that because there's such a misconception. When you inform clients about this, then they feel the need of getting away. They even lose some of that loyalty. I had a customer that had no interest whatsoever in solar. They had no interest. They happened to be a realtor, and they had some bad experiences in transferring solar, and we'll talk about that in just a little while, transferring solar on some of their transactions. So they had zero interest on going solar. But when I educated them, about how the utility companies work, by the end of it, they were like, you know what, that I want to get away from their electric, from their electric utility companies, because people don't like paying more than they need to. So just keep that in mind of how the electric transmission companies work. Now let's do it. I have a comparison. So in this area, we have Modesto Irrigation District, and we have Pacific Gas and Electricity. Okay, so Modesto Irrigation District would fall into the category of a political subdivision. Okay, so Modesto Irrigation would fall into subdivision of a political subdivision. Again, their main purpose is to distribute electricity. Okay, they're not a for-profit organization. They work under the city of Modesto. They work under the city of Modesto, but they are a political subdivision. So if you look here, the cost per electricity can be is 14, a little over 14 cents. Okay. And then it can go as high as 17 cents during the winter. Okay, so that's with Modesto Irrigation District. In the summer, which is the time that most people are using more electricity, then it's 16 cents, over 16 cents, and the highest you're paying is 20 cents for electricity. Okay, that's in the Modesto Irrigation District. Now you compare that with an investor-owned Pacific Gas and Electricity, and the rate starts at 42 cents. Okay, it starts at more than double of the most expensive rate that someone would be paying in Modesto. So you could have a client that has a similar home, uses the same amount of electricity, but if they fall into a different category, a different neighborhood, they are paying twice as much as somebody else. So again, the Pacific Gas and Electricity, their lowest rate that they're paying is 42 cents per kilowatt. On top of that, these are all the different add-ons. So I don't know if you can see my cursor right here. But so based on the 42 cents, then they add the time they usage, how much they use. So a client at PG&E can be paying up to 79 cents per kilowatt. 79 cents per kilowatt. Now you compare that with the maximum that somebody pays at Modesto Irrigation District, which is 20 cents. Okay. And you will see that I mean, clients they're paying more than they need to. Again, we have PG&E is the most expensive in the nation. Okay, so that's another reason for those who are going to be working in the Home Depots. One of the reasons we did not request the Modesto Home Depots is because there's not as much savings for the clients in Modesto. So it's easier to sell solar in some of the surrounding cities than they would. I mean, there's still some benefit for the Modesto Irrigation District, Turlock Irrigation District, but not as much if you're in one of these investor-owned utility companies. Is that making sense to everybody? Let's see. I'm just going to ask Savannah. Does that make sense? Or how about somebody else? Anybody have any questions on what we've discussed so far?
Hi, sorry for my late reply, but yes, it does make sense.
Okay, so again, this is just part of educating your clients, because this is huge. Okay, now this is another big selling point. So the rate of inflation, I think they're trying to keep the rate of inflation below 3%, right? Yeah, last year electricity went up 32%. PG&E clients paid 32% higher last year. Okay, that's a big increase for people to be paying in electricity. On January 1st of this year, PG&E, and this applies for the other utility companies that are investor owned, it went up 13% on January 1st. So from December 31st to January 1st, the cost per kilowatt went up 13%. 2 weeks ago on Thursday, the agency that regulates the utility companies, it's called CPUC, they approved another 12% increase on electricity. Okay, so 32% increase on electricity last year. We've already had close to 28, what's that, 13 and 25% increase year to date on electricity. So when you're talking to your clients, they're starting to feel the pinch of the cost of electricity. One of the things is ask them, how much do you think you'll be paying in 5 years? In fact, we have a tool. I wasn't going to show this, but I think it would come in very good right now. 1 second, let's see. Okay. All right, so the average electric bill as of the beginning of this year in the state of California was $232. Okay, that's the average electric bill in the state of California at the beginning of this year. Okay. Let's just say the electric utility companies get a good heart. Okay, and they say, you know what, we're not going to gouge our clients anymore. We're only going to go up 8%. Okay, that's a positive thing. You know, it's not gonna, you know, they're increasing a lot more than that. But let's just say it goes up 8%. Okay, a client that's paying 232. By year number 10, it's $377. Okay. Now that's at only an 8% increase. If you look at the history of what has happened with electric utility companies, it is more than doubled in the last 10 years. Okay, so last year went up 32%. Let's just move it to 12. Okay. There's no control of how much electric utility companies are going to go up. Again, this is such a big selling point, and just educating your clients about the dangers of, or not you know, your clients don't know what they're going to be paying in 5 years if they stay with an electric utility company, because they are for-profit organization. I hope that makes sense. Let's see. So, so the other thing about the electric utility companies is, you know, when you're buying a car or you're shopping for clothes, you have the option of choosing where you're going to make your purchase, right? If you're putting gas in your car, well, you don't have to use just one gas station. You could choose wherever you choose. But when you're dealing with electricity, it's like a monopoly, and the utility companies, they know it. It's not like you have the option of choosing like you do cell service or internet service. It's like based on where your client's address is going to determine who the electric utility company is. So solar gives your client the option to pretty much break the monopoly of taking control as to how much, you know, how much you're going to be paying in year number 5, year number 7, year number 10. Taking the control away from these investor-owned utility companies. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Let's see, who's on the call right now?
Yeah.
All right. So,
Hey, Adam, are we gonna have access to that tool?
yeah, it's available to everybody. In fact, that is a big selling point. In fact, I'll show you where it's at. Okay, so this is on the sales portal. Pretty much all our tools are on our sales portal. And there's 3 different tools right here. So this is the solar savings estimator. Now, again, when you send it out to your client, you know, you put in when your client tells you, you know, what their average bill is. You know, if they're PG&E, they're going to be paying more than that. But so if they tell you their average bill is $280, you know, I tend to use it at 8%. I leave it at 8%. Oops, what happened here? Oops, 800%.
Whoa.
8% right there. So, and when especially if you're doing a purchase financing of a solar system, and they see that they're going to be paying $45,000 for that system, you know, they're thinking, wow, that's expensive. But when you compare it, this is how much, if it only goes up 8% and they're paying $280 a month, in 25 years, with all the escalations, they will have paid the utility company $265,000. So now you compare that with a $45,000 system, and it just makes sense, right? So if their new electric bill is going to be, let's just say it's going to be 160, okay, then it pretty much puts what the savings is going to be over the life of the system. So again, we are offering the client such a there's a lot of benefit of going solar. And electricity is not a luxury, right? It's something that everybody needs. So when you're showing them what their savings, it's not pennies, it's tens of thousands of dollars over over the time that they live in that home. So yeah, it is available. You just have to go to our sales portal. All right, so let's see. We were talking about so we're talking again, the 3 different points, essential to solar cells. So we touched on understanding the utility grid. Let's go over financing options. Let's see. All righty, so before we move on, anybody have any questions regarding the grid, the electric transmission companies? Okay. All right. So
No questions, thank you.
very good. So, okay, so we're gonna touch on 3 things real quick. We're gonna touch on financing types. There are some financing types that are specific to the solar industry. We're gonna talk about terms and then alternative financing options, okay? So, the client's gonna get
Adam,
the
I think
best.
someone had a question.
What's that?
I think someone had a question.
Oh, what was the question? What was it on?
The question was, have there been any updates on the disconnection feature from the grid on the solar system?
So, explain that to me. Are you talking about net metering?
There used to be a hard switch function, but then I think that switched over to where it was built in as a software mechanism.
Yes,
So,
okay,
for
yeah,
example,
you're talking
PG&E
about the inverter and the batteries. A relay switch is what you're making reference to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I will talk about that when we get to the batteries, because in fact, that's very important to understand how that works. So yes, I'm going to touch on that when I get to the batteries. So yeah, good.
Okay, awesome,
Good,
thank you.
good question. All right, so the client's going to get the best deal when they're able to buy their system cash. Most people don't have the money to pay for a system cash, right? So the alternative of that is there are 3 different financing options. You have the fixed purchase financing option. It gives them a fixed term, a fixed payment. Normally they go up to 25 years. Okay, so it's if they're buying the system for $45,000. In fact, let me show you. We have a tool. In fact, where did it go? This is just for easy numbers, okay? Okay, so let's just say you already know what the system's going to cost. Okay, we would create a quote for you once you submit the intake form, which I'll go over at the very end. Rates, of course, they are higher than they tend to be right now. Right now, we have for purchase financing. They would be at 7% right now. So the payment would be $318, okay, for their system. Okay, so that's how it's pretty straightforward. When you're buying the system, it's pretty straightforward. Where did it go? So fixed term, fixed payment. It's fully amortized, which means that it includes principal and interest. At the end of the term, you own your system outright. There is an interest rate that you're paying throughout the life of the loan, just like you would on any fixed term, fixed product. There are dealer fees. Okay, so up until a year and a half ago, purchase financing was the way to go. That was the way people were purchasing their solar systems, because the interest rates at that time were 0.49, 1%. I know the interest rate we have on our house, I mean, for our solar was 0.99. So, I mean, that's practically free money when you're paying interest rates that low. So now with the market changing and interest rates jumping up, dealer fees have become very popular. So right now, whatever the normal financing would be, they automatically will tack on anywhere from 30% to 42% dealer fees. Okay, so if you're buying a system for 50,000 bucks, just for easy numbers, you know, they will tack on, if you have 42% dealer fee, which seems outrageous, they'll just add another 21,000 just because you finance the system. Okay, so so that's what dealer fees. The one thing about purchase financing is the warranties can be different depending on the finance partner. So all systems are going to have manufacturer warranties. Then you have workmanship warranties. So when you're purchasing the system, you own the system. It becomes your responsibility. It becomes the buyer's responsibility to make sure they know how the warranties work. Now we'll help them. That's something that we will do because we'll have all the information. But they own the system. They own the system. So now what's become very popular as of late, in fact, let me skip that one, has been the lease systems. So SunPower, which is the 4th largest solar company in the United States, 2 years ago, only 8% of their business was leases. Only 8%. Fast forward to August or September of last year, and over 80% of their business was leases. Okay, because the interest rates changed. Now, the thing about leases is you're going to have a fixed payment, but you're not going to own the system. You're just leasing the equipment. You will have what's called production guarantees. So there's more warranties when you use a lease program or when you use what's called a power purchasing agreement, which I'll discuss in a little while. So the production guarantee says if anything breaks, separate from the warranties, that the lease finance company will send a technician out to fix it because there's production guarantees. If it doesn't produce what they say it's going to produce, they will pay you the difference. Now, between lease company to lease company, it can vary. So, for example, SunPower has a very good production guarantee. So, SunPower will say that, and we're a direct dealer with SunPower. So we are a direct dealer with SunPower. So if you bought a system that's supposed to produce 10,000 kilowatts a year, and it only produces 8,500 kilowatts a year, SunPower has a 90% production guarantee. They will pay you the difference between what it should produce, which is at least 9,000 kilowatts, and what it truly is producing. So they have an incentive to send a technician out to get it fixed. You have other companies, let's take Sunrun. Sunrun is the biggest solar installer in California. They claim to have a 95% production guarantee. But if the client is paying 17 cents per kilowatt, and if you have any questions, please stop me because I know I'm sharing a lot of information. But if the client's paying 17 cents or 19 cents per kilowatt, they will offer a production guarantee of 95%, but they won't pay it the cost that they're charging the borrower. They'll pay them 7 cents instead of 17 cents or 19 cents. So there's really not an incentive for them to send a technician out because they're still making profit off of that client. The other thing is, one thing I had missed, when a client is purchasing their system right now, there's a 30% federal tax credit. Okay, not a tax write-off, a tax credit, which means that if the client bought a system for 50,000 bucks, that they will be getting a tax credit of $15,000. So if they paid that amount because they're a W-2 employee, they will get that back dollar for dollar. Again, it's a tax credit, not a tax write-off. Okay, so that was one of the benefits of purchasing a system. With the dealer fees going more than 30%, it's almost eaten up the benefit of getting that tax credit. The reason I mentioned that because on a lease, the client does not get the tax credit. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand the tax credit?
My question is, so you said if they pay at least like 15K down for solar or something like that, right? They get
Yeah,
money
so right
back?
now, correct. If they buy the system, only if they buy the system,
Yeah.
they will get a tax credit from the feds. When they file their taxes, they will get a 30% credit for the total cost of the system. Okay, That's
And that would
$1.
have to be full, like fully paid $15,000. It can't be within, like, say they're not, it was lease the same thing as like if you use like credit, would that be the same thing as leasing, or is that two different things?
They're two different things. Yeah, they're two separate things. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so in fact, good question though. So if they're buying the system, the feds are trying to motivate people to move towards solar. Okay.
Hmm.
So whatever they buy the system for, whatever they buy the system, there's a 30% credit. So again, if they bought a system for $50,000, they will get a tax credit of $15,000. So if they, let's just say they paid a lot of taxes, they had a lot of deductions on their pay stubs, right? So they ended up paying, let's just say they ended up paying $30,000 worth of taxes, and they average getting $9,000 in tax return. Okay. That year they would have gotten the 9,000 that they normally would have gotten in a tax return, plus an additional 15,000 bucks. Okay, because this is a tax credit. If they're self-employed, it works a little bit different because they haven't paid taxes, but they can use this and whatever money they would have had to pay to the IRS. This pretty much becomes, they use that as a credit towards that. Okay, so that only applies if they're buying the system. If they're leasing the system, they do not get a tax credit. The lease finance company is a company that ends up benefiting for that. And that's why the cost for kilowatts is a lot cheaper when you lease or use a power purchasing agreement. Does that make sense? I know I shared a lot of information there.
No, yes, thank you. Appreciate for answering my question.
Good. All right. So there's a lease and then there's a power purchasing agreement. They work almost the same. On both of them, the client does not own the system. On both of them, they have production guarantees. On both of them, the finance company is the one that gets the tax credit. Okay. The difference is on the lease, we'll build a system that calculates how much their system is supposed to produce in a calendar year. Okay, so for easy numbers, if we build a system and then we calculate that their panels are going to produce 10,000 kilowatts in a calendar year, well, most of that's going to be produced during the summer, right? During the winter, when the days are shorter and the it's cloudy and all that stuff, their panels are still going to work, but they're not going to be producing as much electricity as it would during the summer. Okay, but having said that, there's still a way of calculating how much it's going to generate over a 12-month time frame. So whatever it's going to generate in 12 months, they will divide that equally into 12 equal payments. Okay, on a power purchasing agreement, it works like a lease in that you don't own the system, but the difference is going to be that you will have a higher payment. You will have a higher payment in the summer and a lower payment in the winter. You're still paying the same amount, but it's based on its production. Okay, so on a power purchase agreement, it's a variable payment. The cost per kilowatt is going to be usually on a lease and a power purchase agreement, it can be as low as 13 cents and normally as high as 22 cents. Okay, that's how much they tend to pay for their cost per kilowatt. Again, when you compare that with PG&E and all that, that's a very, very good deal. Okay. Now, when a client chooses to get a power purchasing agreement, they can buy the system after year number 6. Okay. Is this making sense? I know I'm sharing a lot of information. So just because they choose to either lease or do a power purchasing agreement doesn't mean they can't own the system. They can, on a power purchase agreement, they can buy it over after year number 6. On a lease, depending on the finance company. Some finance companies allow them to buy the system after year number 5, and some companies don't allow the company to buy, allow the client to buy the system. Okay. All right, let's go over the next. One thing about power purchasing agreements and leases. Let me show you something. Okay. This was actually a quote from one of my last clients. Okay. So on a lease and a PPA, you have an option of selling a system that has an escalator or selling a system that doesn't have an escalator. And what that means is that on every 13, on month number 13, that the payment's going to go up. Okay, so like for this client, it's $176. That's what their lease payment's going to be. On month number 13, it's going to go up 3%. So for the next 12 months after that, their payment's going to go from 176 to 181. And that's what their payment's going to be for 12 months. Okay. So you're able to show them, if the term is 25 years, how much they're going to be paying, what their payment, what they'll be paying for the next 25 years. Now, when you compare this with how quickly the electric utility companies are increasing their rates, again, last year PG&E went up 32%. This year it's already gone up 25%. So when you're telling them it's only going to go up 3%, it's a big savings in comparison to the electric utility companies. Now, we do have an option to not have an escalator. Normally, the cutoff time where it benefits them not to have an escalator is year number 9. Okay, so if you have a client that they're going to be in their house for 3 years, 5 years, because their family is going to be growing or they're going to be moving out of the area, then going with the option with the escalator may be the best route for them. Either way, they're going to be saving a lot of money in comparison to paying PG&E or one of these other electric companies. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. Very good. All right. So escalators, where we spoke about dealer fees. Again, these are fees that they add simply because you're financing the deal. Dealer fees can be as much as 42%. That's not normal. Historically, they have not been that high, but with interest rates going up, instead of giving a client a 10%, 11%, like a client would on an equity loan, they charge high dealer fees in order to keep the interest rates lower. Okay. You have contractor fees. Those are third-party fees. We do not have any partnerships with any finance companies or installers that have contractor fees. So, but you got to be aware of that, because some competitors, they will have partners that install their system where they will add fees to the financing. Okay, now this is very big: transferable or non-transferable. Okay, so what that means is when people get solar on their home, these are long-term investments, 20 years or 25 years that they're going to be paying on that system. Okay, there's a good chance that they're going to be moving, they're going to be selling their home, and there are some systems that are non-transferable, which means when they sell the home, the system has to be paid off. Okay, so for example, we have a relationship with a credit union, and the reason why we established that relationship is because we have 0 dealer fees. What that means is the clients automatically, they're getting the cash price for the system. Okay, so they're saving 30%, 40% of what they normally would pay if they're financing the system. The downside of that is that when they sell the home, it has to be paid off. Okay, so this is not for everybody. So especially when you're doing purchase financing, there's a lot of finance companies like Goodleap, where their business model is where they prefer not to transfer the loan to another buyer. Okay, so that's very important. Now, you have some companies such as SunPower, Sunnova, they make transferring the lease system very easy. Okay, so again, those are just terms, those are things that your clients are going to ask you. Can I transfer this system if I sell the home? Okay, so pretty much with the exception of our credit union relationship, they're all transferable at this time. Okay, financing DTI, that you're not going to come across that very often, Most of the time, when a client applies, they do a soft hit to the credit, and then they just do a verbal on their income. Okay. There are exceptions when clients have low credit score. So for example, I think it's Nova, or it might be Everbright, where they will allow a client with a lower credit score to apply, but they will verify the income. And then you have the debt to income maximum debt that a client can have. Okay. Recast. A recast is when a client is purchasing a system. Let me see, do I have it up here? Okay. So when a client is purchasing a system, and let's just say they got their tax return, they want to apply $5,000 towards their system. Okay. A lot of the finance companies will allow them up to 2 times during the life of the system to make a payment towards their solar system and lower their payment. So let's just say this person was paying $318, but then they paid it down to $35,000. It will recast, and then we'll have a new payment of $247.37. Okay, so that is an option on purchase financing. Most of them have a recast option. Okay, now I mentioned earlier about the tax credit. Okay, so the state of California, or the feds are giving a 30% tax credit. The idea is for the client to use that tax credit and apply it towards the solar. Most people end up using it on something else. If they were going to have a $15,000 tax credit, they'll use it to pay off debt, they'll go on vacation. But sometimes they'll keep a portion of it and apply it towards solar. So that's the way that they'll get the lowest payment, is if they apply the tax rate towards their solar. Let's see what else. Now there are alternative financing options. There's what's called the PACE program. The PACE program, okay, there's an old saying, Ronald Reagan said one of the scariest things to hear is somebody knock on your door and say, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Okay, well, the PACE program, in my opinion, is not a good program. And that's what it is. It's the government pretty much stepping in, and this is for people that didn't qualify for any financing. And pretty much the government is saying, put solar on this home, and we will add the cost of the solar on their property taxes. We do have access to it, and if you use it right, if you use it where you're, there's a company out of Dublin that all they do is a PACE program, and they use this because clients don't qualify for other products, and they are charging, twice as much for a system than they should, and what they're doing is they're gouging clients. So, and the client, they're going to qualify because they just have the bill, the cost to the bill. So that's one option. Now I'm excited. We just have a new finance relationship. It started out on the East Coast and now it moved over to California, where this is a PPA, a power purchasing agreement. It doesn't matter what their credit score is. If there's savings, we can get them a PPA. Now, the cost per kilowatt is more than if they had good credit. It's usually around 25 cents to 30 cents. But when you compare that to PG&E, that starts at 42 and can be up to 79 cents, they're still saving. So we do have more options for people with low credit. Some people, they take a HELOC out of the house, or they do a consolidation refinance. We do have a number of people on the team that are licensed to do those type of financing. Okay, so any questions on that? Okay, I know it's a lot of information, and okay, so we touched on that. All right, so we touched on that. Now let's talk about solar panels. Now there's again, I'm not going to give you all the details about it, but enough information where you'll be able to talk to your clients about it. The solar panels, the way they work, and they used to be, in fact, we had a client reach out today. They used to be about 200 kilowatts, 250 kilowatts. That's what they were. Now the panels of today are way better than the systems that they used to have, even 5 years ago. So it takes less space on the roof. Now, the thing about the panels is you want to remember that a lot of people, they've had experiences that they're what's called degradation. Right now, the average panel their degradation is about 0.5% per year. In other words, in 20 years, that panel is operating at about 90% efficiency. That's on average, okay? A few years ago, the degradation was 3%, 4%. So they weren't operating very well. The other thing to take into consideration is that the panels only absorb about 20%, some panels up to 30% of the rays that hit it. So just picture a solar panel like when you're playing basketball. You can shoot in the right direction, but if you do not have the right curve, it's not going to land in there. Same thing with the solar panels. Not all the rays that hit the panels are actually converted into electricity. The other thing to know about panels is, let's see, you want to, the direction that the roof is set is going to determine the efficiency of their system. So you could have two homes. One of them can have 20 panels, and the house across the street can have 20 panels. And one of them can be producing a lot more energy than another one because it's based on the direction of the roof. So if you have a lot of stuff like let's say air conditioning or vents where it keeps the installers from being able to put it on the south side of the roof, then they're going to have a less efficient system. So the south side is the best side to put panels, the south side. The second side, if you had a second option, then it's going to be the west side. Okay, and the reason for the west side is because the utility companies, they charge the cost per kilowatt based on time of day. So during the day, the cost per kilowatt is not very expensive. But when people get home from work around 4 o'clock, the cost per kilowatt, the demand for electricity goes up. So around 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock is the most expensive time to be buying electricity from the electric companies. So if you have west facing, it's still absorbing electricity a little bit longer into the evening. Okay, so those are the two best sides. Automatically, if you're using the west side or the east side, the effective rate drops about 15%. If you're using the north side, which that's like the worst case scenario, simply you might put it there because you have to, but the efficiency is going to be a 30% reduction. So again, the south side is the best side to get the panels, and then west side would be the second option to get the panels. Now, the other question that people ask is, okay, what happens if they get dirty? Well, normally, the rain takes care of it. If you're in an area where there hasn't been a lot of rain, or you're out in the country where there's a lot of dust, then you might want to wash them down. Now, again, this is just general information. You do not want to use power washers on them because they have a coating that if you use power washer, you're making the system degrade. So just giving them general information is, soft water, a sponge. Don't use anything that's don't scrub them down. Okay, they just wash them down, and that's enough. Okay, so a lot of people think, well, they're going to get a power washer and they're going to be more efficient. No, they're actually doing bad against that. Now, on the very first year is when these panels have the most degradation, because usually it's an install issue. Okay, also if they tighten the brackets too much, they can actually crack the windows. They're less efficient. If you're in an area where there's a lot of change in temperature, it'll be very hot during the day and very cold at night, then that can affect the soldering. So that can affect efficiency and degradation, but on the most part, they're built very, very well. So let's see, anything else? Let me look at my notes on this. Yeah. Oh, the other thing is shading. Shading can affect the efficiency of the panel. So we've had some deals where in order, the clients have to cut back some trees, because you could have a bunch of panels, but if they're shaded, it's not going to be working. Okay. So any questions on solar panels? All right. I know this is just fun information, right? All right. The second thing is inverters. Okay, so so I mentioned there's three pieces of equipment on the solar system. You have the solar panels, and then you have the inverters. The inverters are like the brain of the system. Okay, so when the rays are collected, they're collected as direct currents, and then they're converted into alternating currents, and that's what the inverter does. Not only does it convert, but it also communicates information of how efficient the system is. So when a client gets a solar system, okay, they're also getting get an app on their phone that allows them to monitor how their system's operating, and it's a microinverter that will communicate that information. That is also a reason why when you're getting a system installed, unless you're off grid, it's going to require you to have a Wi-Fi connection. Especially if you're leasing the system, it's going to require for it to be able to connect to the internet. Now, two types of inverters. There's actually three, but two main types of inverters. There's what's called string inverters. That's the cheapest way of getting an inverter. So the way that works is on a roof, you will have like 5 or 6 panels on one roof, and then on another, maybe another 5 or 6 panels. So what will happen is a whole bunch of panels will be tied into one string and connected to the inverter. Okay. So you could have, if you have like 20 panels, usually you'll have like 4 strings, five panels per string. Okay. The reason that matters is because the efficiency, the panel that's the least efficient is going to determine the efficiency of all the panels on that string. Okay. So if you have a string inverter, and in fact, you do not want to use a string inverter in a shady area, because if you have a tree that's blocking the sun on one panel and it's only producing 30% efficiency, well, all the panels on that string are going to be operating at 30% efficiency. Okay. The other thing about a string inverter, because they all go into one box, there's a single point of failure. Okay. So string inverters, they're very popular. They work in a lot of situations, but they're not for every property. Okay. So then you have microinverters. Microinverters, every panel will have its own inverter that's converting, the electricity. So what happens is, let's just say one panel is in a very shady area. Well, that panel might be operating at 30% efficiency, but the rest of the panels will be operating at 100%. Okay. So that's a string inverter. So you have microinverter and you have string inverter. Okay. Let's see. Somebody raise their hand. Yeah. Did
If
somebody have a
a
question?
string inverter, yeah. What if it's not shady, but then on a string inverter, and then one of the panels like just breaks, like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. If whatever it causes, if one panel is operating at 0% because it broke, all the panels on that string are not going to operate. Yeah. So
Okay.
now when you have like a lease system, you have a production guarantee, and they will send a technician out because you're paying for a certain amount of production. So if it breaks, that's one of the benefits of the inverters. Now, a lot of they don't break a whole lot unless, like, you have a hailstorm or some sort of natural disaster. So the things that keep it from working less is shade, pigeon poop, dirt. So those are the kind of things that will make them less efficient. Okay. So you have string inverter, microinverter, and then you have what's called optimizers. Optimizers. So, let me just finish one thing about microinverters, on the microinverter. So a microinverter is on every single panel, it has its own little microinverter. One of the other that's more expensive than the string inverter, but one of the benefits is that system does not have a single point of failure. So you could have a whole panel that's not working, but because it has a bunch of microinverters, it doesn't have a single point of failure. Okay. So a string inverter, they all go to one inverter. So if that inverter breaks, well, the whole system's not operating. Okay. Then you have what's called optimizers. An optimizer is an add-on to a string inverter. Pretty much it's like a hybrid between a microinverter with a string inverter. So every panel has its optimizer. So if one panel is operating at 30%, but it has an optimizer, and the next one is operating at 100% and has an optimizer, well, it has that benefit where they're not, even though it's on a string inverter, they all work independently. Where it's the same as a string inverter is that they still go into one inverter, so there's a single point of failure. Okay. So again, the microinverter is the brains of the situation. And depending on the microinverter, also determines the size of the system, determines the type of battery you can get. Okay. So so that's how that worked. Now, I think it was Eric that asked the question regarding being tied to the grid. Okay, so there's a lot of misconception. A lot of people think that if I have solar panels, that if the electricity goes out, then I'm fine. That's a misconception. Unless you're in the mountains and you're off grid, you are tied to the electric utility companies. Okay, so if PG&E has a rolling blackout and you have panels on your roof, then your house is not going to be operating, because not only does PG&E doesn't want to receive energy, because if they're working on the system there and you're sending electricity back to the grid, well, you're going to cause problems somewhere else, right? So your system will quit working. There's an off switch. Okay. So prior to April 15th of 2023, so last year, they had the state of California passed a new law called Net Metering 3.0. Okay. So prior to April 15th of last year, the vast majority of people that went solar would not get a battery. The vast majority. They didn't have to. And the reason for it is because their system would produce extra electricity, okay? And they would size the system so it would produce enough electricity so that during the day, it would sell electricity back to the electric utility companies. So if they sold it for 30 cents, in the evenings when they needed it, they bought it for 30 cents. So it was a wash. The most important thing about it was to build a system that would produce enough to offset the use of night. Okay. Now, after April 15th of last year, the electric utility companies, PG&E, all these investor owned, again, they're about making money. They changed it where when you produce extra electricity, they will pay you 3 to 5 cents. That's it. They pay you 3 to 5 cents. In the evenings, when your panels are no longer producing electricity, they will charge it to you anywhere from 42 cents to 79 cents. Okay. So prior to April 15th, people weren't getting batteries. After April 15th of last year, you pretty much have to get a battery for solar to make sense. That's why the cost for solar panels went up after April 15th. Okay. Now, so misconception is that if people have solar panels that are automatically, they're going to be protected against rolling blackouts. That's not the case because it's tied to the grid. Now, there's what's called a relay switch. That's an option that if you have a battery, that you can set it up where your home will continue to operate if there's a rolling blackout. Now, misconception number 2 is automatically that if you have a battery that if there's a rolling blackout, you're protected. No. There's an extra cost when you get that relay switch. Okay, so the cheapest way is to have solar panels and just have a battery, and that's called time of use. Okay, that's what called time of use, which pretty much means so long as the grid is still on, there's no rolling blackout, you're using the energy that extra energy that you produced. But again, the electric utility companies do not want you to send energy if they do a rolling blackout. Okay, they don't want you to send any. So it ends up costing, it's a few $1,000s. It's worth it for you for clients to get that relay switch. Now, if you're out in the country, we live out in the country, so we're out here and we get rolling blackouts on a regular basis. If you're in a residential area, clients don't get a whole lot of rolling blackouts. So they might get one once a year, 2 times a year. So that's where they'll want to gauge whether it's to their benefit to get a battery that's full backup or just time of use battery. Okay. So does that make sense? So there's time of use backup or time of use batteries, and then there's backup batteries. Okay, and when I say backup, that means partial backup. Okay, batteries have a maximum capacity. Okay, so if you have a 13 kilowatt battery, which is a good sized battery, that's enough to run your home at night. Okay, even if there's a rolling blackout. But if you have like a jacuzzi and swimming pool, well, those luxury items are not going to be backed up, especially if you have a EV charger, an electric vehicle. An EV charger can use 48 kilowatts. Okay, so it can use quite a bit. So again, so there's partial backup. Now we do have what's called whole house backup, and that's when you have like a 40 kilowatt battery, a big storage system. Okay, does that make sense? I know I'm sharing a lot of information today. Again, my whole idea is give you enough information to, and again, I'm going to record this. I'm going to send this out to you, but give you enough information that when your clients are in front of you, you know some of this information. Okay. All right, excellent. All right. The other thing is one of the luxuries, and here's one of the things that should take some of the fear factor out of approaching a client to sell solar is, in fact, I was having this conversation with somebody just the other day. When you're selling solar, one of the luxuries is it's a two-part sale. And what I mean by that is if you're let's just say you're selling a car and a client drives up to your dealership. Well, your goal is to have them make a purchase before they leave for the day, right? That's a goal. You know that once they leave, the odds of them coming back have gone down. Well, in solar sales, it's a whole different process because you cannot even make the sale because you don't have enough information. So in solar sales, it's a two-part process. The first process is one, selling the benefit of solar, and two is finding out the details of what your client needs. So let's go to, there's two things. Let's go here. Okay, so know your customer. One thing, a few years ago, in fact, you've probably seen some marketing pieces where one of the larger companies here in California would say, go solar for $79 a month. Okay. What they weren't telling you was that they would put like 6 panels on your roof, regardless of what your home electricity usage was. So you could have a person, you could have a 3,000 square foot home and they would only get 6 panels. They could have a swimming pool, they could have electric vehicles. Well, that was not going to produce enough electricity for your clients to wipe out their electric bill. Okay. So what these companies would do is all they want to do was tie up the property. They didn't care to personalize a system based on their need. Okay. We don't operate that way. We want to, the systems that we're going to produce is at least 100% offset, normally 103%, 107%. Okay. And what that means is we'll look at the history of what they used in the previous 12 months, and we will build a system that will cover that usage and a little bit extra. So 103 to 100%, 107% is what we would create. If the client chooses not to get a system that's going to cover at least 103 to 100, at least 100% offset, then there's a form that we have them sign, letting them know that that they're getting a system that's not sufficient. Again, our business model is to do right, to take care of our clients. So the way you do that is knowing your customer's needs. So on the intake form, which everybody should have, their name should already be in here, I think. If not, you can log in and check it out for yourself. And just going through these questions will allow you to find, build a system that's going to benefit them. Okay, you want this information to be as accurate as possible. Who's on title? The person that's on title is the person that can go into contract. If this person is leasing the house, or renters, you can't go into contract with them. They do not have the authority to put solar on their system if they don't own the property. Okay, so use their legal name as it appears on their utility bill. Okay, so property address, getting it exactly correct, especially what a lot of people are doing, and we're seeing this happen quite a bit, is they will put, let's just say 1512 Elm Street. Well, there's a lot of Elm Streets in a lot of cities, so make sure you put the city. Okay, so put the city and all that good stuff, the client's email, phone number, best time to call. What's their motivation? If their motivation is monthly savings, tax credit, if they're self-employed, and they're just dreading that tax bill, so they want to be able to use their tax credit to offset that tax bill. Well, you would put that here. Very important question right here. Does anyone in your household require electricity for medical devices? Okay, again, a lot of people have the misconception that if they have solar panels, they're going to have electricity in a rolling blackout. That is not accurate. That's not true. So if they're dependent on medical devices, then we need to know that. That way they have a battery backup system that's going to work for them. Okay, so that's a very important question to ask. Ask them what their average electric utility bill is. Are they owner on titles? Most people won't know this. If you're able to, clients can give you access to pull up their information from PG&E. We also have a tool called API where you're able to get the history of usage. Okay, so if you know that information, what their exact usage has been, then we're able to build the most accurate system. Okay, the type of roof they have. The type of roof can make a difference of the cost for the installation. So if they have a clay roof, shingle roof, and so shingle roof or the compost roof is, they'll want to make sure that their roof still has sufficient life on their roof. If it's in bad shape, then when they do what's called a site inspection, they can call for that to be replaced. Now, if that's called for, then usually it can be financed as part of the system. Now, we also have options where we can do entire roofs with solar if they're purchasing the system. So that's the best way where a client doesn't have any money out of pocket. Now, when they're through one of these investment utility companies, it's possible for them to get a new roof and even get their electric bill and be paying about the same, or maybe just a little bit different, a little bit more or a little bit less than what their current electric utility bill is. So that's a way of them getting a new roof and still paying the same. Okay. MPU upgrade, that stands for main panel upgrade. Okay. If the home is, 20 years old, 25 years old, 30, whatever, and they haven't upgraded their panel box, then there's a good chance that'll be needed. Okay. So you put yes, no. If this home is, from the 60s or 50s, then, just expect for it to have to be changed. The reason I mention that, because there's a cost depending on the installer, from $2,500 to $3,000 to do a main panel upgrade. If you don't know, just put not sure. Okay. If they want an EV charger, you would put yes or no. If it's a residential home, it's either going to be a level 1 or a level 2. Okay, just so you know, a level 1 is going to take them a lot. What is it, like 8 hours or longer to charge their vehicle? If it's a level 2, then it'll take a number of 4 hours to charge their vehicle, depending on their vehicle, of course, their need for their vehicle. So that we can install those. Ground mount solar, there's a charge for that. When somebody has, especially a 2-story home, they may not have enough roof space on it, or if they have let's just say they have a big property and they want their panels away from their roof, we can do a ground mount, but it does add, that's one of the more expensive add-ons. Okay. Also ask your clients a question. Do they plan to make any modifications on their property? Are they going to add a swimming pool? Are they going to add an ADU? Are they going to, add a jacuzzi? Are they going to buy an electric vehicle? The other thing, when you think about modifications, are there any changes to their living habits? So for example, if let's just say they're going to retire in 6 months. Well, that's going to change their routine. They're going to go from being at the office all day to from being home. Or are they changing from being a remote worker to working at home, or vice versa, right? Or do they have families do they have in-laws that are gonna be moving in, you know? So ask them the questions, because if you build a system and then, you know, later on, they could call you back, well, I'm getting what's called a true-up bill because their system's not producing enough, so now they're getting a bill from the electric company. Sometimes it's tied to, they made a change in their living, in the, their living situation. Okay, so knowing those questions, asking those questions will help you build a system that's accurate, that will help them out. The other thing is, it could be simple stuff. So the cost of gas is going up, right? So the gas that, you know, they're paying gas and electricity. So a lot of people, they're changing out their gas water heaters to the tankless water heaters. It's going to electrical. They're changing their gas stoves to electric stoves. So all those things, asking those questions will help you build a system that you'll just have a satisfied customer. Any questions on that? No questions on that? Okay. Now, yes, what, you have a question, Caleb?
The true up bill,
Mm-hmm.
is something that we don't want the customers to have to get.
Right, no. So the true-up bill happens when they did not have a system that was built. Um, their system's not producing enough electricity, so they're having to get electricity from the utility company. Okay. Now, two reasons that happens: one, the system wasn't sized right, or two, they changed their habits. Now, there's for those who've gone through the orientation call, there's some articles in the sales portal. People tend to increase their use of electricity when they go solar. It's just a normal process. People tend to use more electricity when they go solar. So so that's why it's always a good idea to oversize the system. I oversized the system 117%. Now, the downside of that is, if they're doing a lease or a PPA, they are paying not on what they use, they are paying based on the production of the system. Okay, so that's very important. So you want to oversize it within reason. Okay, so again, I want to explain that. So if they're getting a lease or they're getting a power purchasing agreement, okay, they are paying on what the system produces. So they could have gone to vacation and, you know, and turned off everything in their home. They're still going to have a bill because their system produced electricity, whether they used it or not. Okay, so if you oversize the system on a lease, be careful. Don't overdo it unless you know they're going to be making a modification on their home. Okay. So the reps, one of the distinctions that we have as a company is we have more products. You know, we have all the financing options and we have more products for our team, including the sales reps have the option of doing both residential and commercial. Okay, so on commercial, Isabel, and we have a commercial manager. His name is Nathan Kern out of San Jose. Nathan, yeah. Anyways, those will require more involvement from management. Okay, those are, it's a whole different system. But anyways, I mentioned that because on the intake form, these questions down here would apply if you're doing a commercial. Trenching a commercial parking lot, you know, where, let's just say they have blacktop a parking lot, and you know, there could be a bunch of stuff underground. There could be gas lines, you know, whatever, sprinkler system, sewage system. So trenching can cost up to $1,000 a foot. So it could be crazy depending on how much that land has been developed. On a residential, where it's just, you know, trenching in a backyard, you know, there might be a few sprinkler lines. It's like $30 a foot. So again, not that all commercials can be 1,000, but what I'm saying is you want to know that information, because a 50-foot trench line or 150-foot trench line, based on how much development has happened on the land, could be very expensive. Okay, again, the county regulates the, you know, how deep that our trenches for electricity and all that has to be. So again, that could be very expensive. So knowing that kind of information will make a difference. We are a direct dealer for carports with panels. What type of financing do they want? So again, this has pretty much been, I've tried to go over the 6 pieces of information, and I know I've gone over a lot in a little while. The 6 pieces of information on your alone time. 1, 2, 3. Panels, inverters, batteries. Read articles on it. Panels, inverters, batteries. Those are the 3 pieces of equipment for a solar system. So panels, inverters, batteries. The industry expertise that you need to know is how the utility companies operate, the finance options, and know your customers. Again, 1, 2, 3. If you're gonna, this industry can be so vast. So the idea of this training class was just break it down to those 3 things: solar panels, inverters, batteries, and then understand the utility grid, financing options, and know your customers. All right. Any questions? Let's see. Here, let me stop sharing. Who do we have on? Let's see. Savannah, any questions, Savannah? I know I covered a whole lot today.
Hi, no. Yeah, you did cover a lot, but no questions for me. Thank you.
Okay. Eric, Pineda?
Okay, so I do have a question. So when it comes to auding our commission, do we show the customer, does that go higher in terms of I mean, you were talking cents.
Yeah.
Can you go ahead?
Yeah. So okay. So so on when you are, so right here's where you would put your commission. Okay. And on a lease or a PPA, on the most part, you are capped at $1.25 per kilowatt. That's the maximum that we allow the reps that work for us to charge. Okay. The average system size is 6,800 kilowatts. So you can do the math on that. If you're charging $1, you're making 6,800 on the sale. Okay. That is very fair. That's going to have very little impact on their increased cost per kilowatt on a lease or PPA. Okay. Because this is spread out over 25 years. So I have messed with it myself, and lowering it 10 cents will lower it like $2-3 a month. It's very minimal. Now there's some companies that do not have a cap of what their sales reps, and the more you're in the industry, you hear it. Anyways, there's some people that overdo it in what they charge their clients. So they'll charge $2, $3 in incentive. And we have a deal. I got a call from a realtor the other day because they have a house in a contract, a small home, 1,200 square foot home, and they paid $89,000 for their solar system. Their solar system should have cost them about $40,000, $45,000, and now they cannot sell the home because there's not enough equity, and the finance company is unwilling. The solar finance company is unwilling to transfer to the new buyer. So to answer your question is, when you're charging 90 cents, $1.10, it's gonna be a few dollar difference in the payment. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question you had?
Yes.
Good. All right. Any other questions? How about
No.
Raimundo? No. How about Raimundo? Any questions, Raimundo? I know I covered a lot.
No questions. Yeah, I mean, pretty much you've answered everything that I might have had questions about. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do my due diligence and kind of study a little bit more as far as solar goes.
Yeah.
But no, as far as the selling part, I mean, that's just natural. Just basically conversating with the customer and getting them to like you. But me personally, I want to be more knowledgeable
Yeah.
when it comes to solar because I want it to come out more, more natural. I don't want to sound like a broken record.
Right. Yeah. And again, just those 6, that's why I broke it. Those 6 points are where I would focus on. Just being able to inverters, batteries is where I'd start, and then panels, and yeah, good deal. How about Arturo? Any questions, Arturo?
No question at the moment.
All right, very good. And then I don't know who the 925 is. Let's see. I guess I could check it on my phone. Is that Johnny? Oh, it is you. Okay. All right, good deal. I know Johnny's been, he wanted to join, but I think he's gone through this stuff a couple of times, so good deal. All right, well, thank you for your time. Again, anything I can help you with, please, feel free to reach out to me. Now, what I addressed today was just general information of the industry. For those who are going to be a part of the Home Depot, that's going to be specific with Sunnova. Sunnova is going to give a lease option, and we cannot steer to any other product besides the option that Sunnova allows us to sell their clients that are at Home Depot. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Today's session was just about sharing general information.
Do you know when we'll be getting the shirts for Sunnova?
Yeah, so I had a call today on that. We will get them delivered on Wednesday. So Wednesday we'll get them delivered here. We'll get our banners, and then I'm gonna drive them out to the first meet. If someone's gonna be at their store next week, then I'll ship them out. But if somebody's scheduled to be at their store this week, then I'll just drive them out to meet you wherever you might be. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Very good. All right. Thank you all for your time. And feel free to reach out to me if I could be any help. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Cool.
day.
Thank you.
You too. All right.
Thank
bye.
you.
Bye.